Good morning, welcome to Morning Views. This is Kim speaking on Monday, the 6th of February. So, looking at the euro dollar first, and well, we've seen a bit of a sell off so far this morning. Friday ended up relatively bullish, a decent hammer back into pretty much where the weekly pivot was. However, it didn't hold on to those gains, and it's at the moment selling off back towards the weekly pivot at the moment. There's still potential here, as I said that, earlier or late last week rather. We had this divergence here, had a bit of a sell-off from that. It may have worked itself clear, the divergence sort of move, but I was concerned of more weakness primarily because of the monthly pivot that sits down there at 106. 500, and I was wondering if we'll see that challenged at some point towards the earlier part of the month. Of course, if it continues bouncing and it's nearly close to its weekly pivot at the moment, but if it continues in its bounce, that will be missed. But the way the price actions are happening here at the moment, I'm still erring a little towards the bearish side on some of these markets, and we're currently sitting behind the below the daily pivot now. Okay, we may get an all change point at some point this morning. If we do, I really need to see sort of these highs somewhere along this trend line. There may be a slightly different trend line to draw here, but this trend line broken. Alternatively, if it starts breaking below the weekly pivot, then I think it makes it much more of a clear run towards, well, the lows on Friday and maybe beyond. Cable is a bit more of a mixed picture here. Still got its monthly pivot untouched below, although the price was pretty close to it leading up to the pivot, new pivots there. So sometimes we just see those would be missed. Although if you're looking at this 4 hourly, it looks like a relatively clear picture down. Just to muddle the waters a bit, we've got a monthly pivot above us, which could be hit at some point. We're already hit and below the daily pivot, so my preference still here is really to the downside. So pretty much like on Friday, tune hasn't really changed here on these markets. I'm still erring towards the more bearish side. As I say, cable maybe is always got the potential of spoiling things in a sense with its more volatile movements, and any sort of whispers of Brexit seems to get it moving one way or the other. Anyway, so at the moment, short term ish, we could be on for Friday's lows, the S1, and maybe, as I said, that target of the monthly pivot is a potential and could well be hit today, tomorrow. Dollar yen, well, again, this is another one of those that had a bit of a divergence going on last week, and well, whether it's worked itself completely off or not is another matter, but it is working in the right direction for that divergence that was there. Pointed out on Friday morning, it's still got the potential of shifting up. The weekly pivots above us and the monthly pivots above us, so there is potential for some points out of that if it does start moving up to the upside. As I said, the weekly pivot may be the easier route at the moment. Looking at the shorter time frames here, if all changes again, it's a bit like the euro in a sense. I'll be looking for a sort of a bit of a close below this trend line, and then I'll be looking for Thursday's lows as some sort of target, somewhere in that region. Above the daily pivot, well, then it makes it a bit of an easier route up towards the weekly pivot. Aussie dollar. Well, the Aussies held on well to its gains mostly. It's stronger of the lot. It's it almost diverged, didn't quite diverge last week. Has a weekly pivot below at the moment and is heading down towards that. So that could see us either provide some support, or if it starts selling off through that, well, I think it's probably a bigger ask for the Aussie to get back to its monthly pivot now. It's cleared quite a distance away, but if it does start breaking down, it still becomes a bit of a target. Side of that, well, it's already hit some of its major moving averages, but the daily 21 would be a decent target to the downside if it starts kicking that way. And finally, the Canadian dollar. In fact, I just want to have a quick look at how well oil is holding up, and it's holding up pretty well. So let's come back to that Canadian dollar. And That was the story for it last week with this sort of holding on around these lows. It's consolidated, didn't pull back or retrace as much as the other currencies. Partially, I should imagine, would be based on that sound firm oil price at the moment. But it's got the potential again back for the weekly pivot, so softening of the Canadian dollar. And well, if it does start getting put beyond those sort of the 8-day moving average, well, it could at some point still, it's still in the early part of the month, could be chasing up that monthly pivot. But at the moment, certainly the weekly pivot looks like a potential a close. It's made a bit of an ugly picture at the moment, but maybe it'd be a simpler one. I know it's not a closed bar, and in some respects shouldn't be drawing on top of it, but if it starts running up in that direction, well, it could be on for that weekly. Likewise, a more clearer set here or trend potential is this sort of these lows and a break. Whoops, roughly there. Anyway, there we go. That'll do. But a break of that sort of area could see us breaking off Friday's lows, the S1, and Thursday's lows. So see how we roll there. But at the moment, these markets, and I say at the moment, because they so often switch at this time in the morning or near this time in the morning. It's looking okay, but it's still looking okay for the continuation to the upside. But any break of this trend line would see us heading south, and watch how the markets run. I just noticed the euro's pulling back as I'm talking, but not massively. Okay, that's it for me. News-wise, there is very little out today. German factory orders are already out. There's nothing else of any significance, any lower value news not including. Tomorrow morning, well, I'll just do a quick in on that because that'll be done before I do the video. And there's the Australian, Reserve Bank of Australia's rate statement, cash rate, so interest rate statements out at 3:30. Not expect to see any change, but so there's one for really early tomorrow morning. Right, that's it for me. Have a great day. I'll be back later.